Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy.
More than a week has passed since that incident at the Baftas where Johnny Davidson let out a rather unfortunately timed tick of a very offensive word. I've already described the incident in a previous video, ultimately concluding that it wasn't Johnny Davidson's fault. It's the symptoms of Tourette's syndrome at a very inconvenient time, and the spoiled narcissists of elitist Hollywood and Twitter were practically bullying him for it just to make themselves look good. I wanted to further elaborate on that latter part because, now whilst some of you will already be nodding your heads in agreement with what I'm saying, there's other people in my audience who won't recognize the sheer weight of this specific moment, the sheer weight of this event and how it's exposed the woke agenda. The reason why people wouldn't recognize the sheer weight of this event is mainly because they don't really keep up with entertainment news to the same extent that I and others do. So hopefully this video will add some much needed clarity to this event. So let's get straight into it. The reason why elitist Hollywood people and the people of Twitter accuse Johnny Davidson of being racist even though he can't control the tics of his Tourette's syndrome, it's because these elitists and Twitter folk want to make themselves look good rather than actually be and do good.
See, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble.
The aforementioned extremists at Hollywood and Twitter want to look good solely on the basis of social standing and political safety, rather than actually doing good regardless of whatever social norms come and go in society. This is why you must never, ever, ever conform, because the harsh reality about history is that what's treated as a norm today could very well be scolded in the future. And what's acceptable today may not be acceptable for another society at some point in the future. You know, the opinions of mere human beings just come and go. Mere human beings by themselves just keep making up rules for their own convenience, rather than sticking to timeless virtue regardless of the fluctuating opinions of mere human societies. This is why things and trends tend to get rather dated over time. And this is why people of all political sides are at fault, because all these politics, by definition, are established by flawed human beings trying to establish flawed human ideologies. For the past decade, modern Hollywood has been sabotaged by the woke agenda, which leans to a very extreme left-leaning political position. Now listen to me carefully. I'm not talking about politically left-leaning people. I'm talking about extreme politically left-leaning people. These extremists have recently exposed themselves through this controversy that's occurred during the Baftas. The way the mentality of these extremists work, it's a hive mind. It's this very super binary, black and white way of thinking. You're either on the right side or the wrong side, no room for nuance.
You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves, they don't.
Jamie Foxx has come out on Twitter and responding saying that this is that he meant it. That this man who's disabled, who has this condition, that he meant it. And so that was Jamie Foxx's take.
You just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now.
It takes a strong man to deny what's right in front of him. And if the truth is undeniable, you create your own.
This was the opportunity for Hollywood to show a little grace to the person that they are supposedly honoring a film made about his life, but many of them showed that they couldn't do that.
None of this would have happened if you just stopped. But on you marched. And for what?
Alan Cumming did try to defend the situation, and he got a lot of blowback for that.
They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys.
This faulty way of thinking was exposed during the Bafta award ceremony because Johnny Davidson has Tourette's syndrome, and they claim to be inclusive for people with disabilities, and they also claim to want to end racism. But then Johnny Davidson, by no fault of his own, through the tics of Tourette's syndrome, said the very inappropriate N-word. And so those extremists called him racist, even though it wasn't his fault.
To them, you're just a freak. Like me. They need you right now. But when they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. They're only as good as the world allows them to be.
This is their extreme binary at play. They are too afraid to let go of their pride of making themselves look good, rather than have the nuance, dignity, and humility to actually do and be good. Also, if people like Mrs. Randolph are serious in their claim that having the thought of saying the N-word makes someone guilty of saying it, then that by default makes her guilty of it too, because she's thinking of someone saying it, therefore she's thinking of saying it, therefore she's guilty of it, and that in turn would make all of us guilty.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
You really need to be careful with your definitions. Seriously though, this claim shows a complete ignorance of Tourette's syndrome. Tourette's syndrome is more pressured by cultural conditioning, not from a lack of self-mastery.
So they're going to honor this film for being a good film and raising awareness for this, and then a real life scenario, just like what is portrayed in the film, happens in real life. And we get to see the intolerance behind it.
The real problem with people like Grace, though, is that they can't understand neurodivergent thinking. For all their high-minded talk of tolerance, empathy, and understanding, they really can't seem to form a mental map of any mind that operates differently from their own. That's why they can't conceive that people might have different opinions from them, different worldviews, or in this case, different ways of processing words and thoughts. You know, it's fascinating to watch people who make it their business to get offended on behalf of others for a living, suddenly having the unstoppable force of racism slam into the immovable object of ableism and just completely lose their minds over it. Suddenly they don't have a pre-written script telling them how to think and feel, and are having to exercise their critical thinking muscles for the first time in their adult lives. And well, many of them have been found wanting.
When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
For the extremists, there is no room for critical thinking, no room for even constructive feedback. They want to puff themselves up in their pride. And for the past decade, they have threatened to silence anyone who gets in their way, even for the people who are just trying to give constructive criticism for the stories they were making. People like me and other people online kept trying to inform constructive feedback by saying that we too want to have great female protagonists. However, the female protagonists being made by the woke crowd are completely narcissistic. And when you point out these flaws in the way they form these characters, the woke crowd will call you a misogynist for critiquing their very poorly written female characters, even though that was not our intention. They apply that stance towards constructive criticisms towards characters who happen to be of different cultures or genders or so on and so forth. Now, of course, rather unfortunately, there are still very toxic people out there like Andrew Tate, who the woke crowd will heavily critique. But what makes the woke crowd so hypocritical is that the way they form their characters they want to perpetuate for their agenda, they've embraced the very toxic traits they claim about toxic masculinity. They just take what they criticize in toxic masculinity, like you would see in that jerk called Andrew Tate, and just apply it to their own female characters, their own African-American characters, and so on and so forth, and say, look at us, we're so proud of what we've done. Absolute morons. And every time we've tried to give them constructive criticism, they pretty much assume that any trace of constructive criticism must mean alliance with, like, the jerk called Andrew Tate or something, which is just not true.
That's a filthy lie!
Andrew Tate is a jerk. No one in their right mind would want to be like him. We want to be inclusive, right? We want to empower women. We want to treat everybody equally. Because everyone's made in a divine image, but that kind of compassion cannot come at the expense of degradation towards other groups of people out of pure spite rather than considerable reconciliation. The woke crowd have formed a very startling, strange kind of tyranny which involves compassion at the expense of truth, which in turn is not real compassion. They want to silence people giving constructive criticism, not because the people giving constructive criticism are wrong, but because the woke crowd fear being exposed.
But he's a liar. He's poisoned you against me.
The people who talk about tolerance are the most intolerant people.
Throughout the past several years, I have been critiquing several pieces of entertainment where the woke agenda has infested the quality of those stories. Going as far back to when I critiqued Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 1 on Netflix. That show involved a depiction of He-Man where He-Man sacrificed himself for the world and it's still deteriorating, and much of the bulk of criticism on the show mainly centered around the depiction of Teela. Teela got angry at He-Man for leaving the world in a deteriorating state, even though she should be thankful to even have a world, given the fact that He-Man sacrificed himself to save the world, even in its deteriorating state. She rejects her position and then goes all rogue. There's even a part later on in that show where she meets He-Man in the afterlife. He says, "I died," and then she says, "Yeah, and the rest of us had to live with that." What an ungrateful moron! You wouldn't have a world to save if He-Man didn't sacrifice himself! And the show never challenges her ironic, arrogant narcissism. The show constantly puts her on a pedestal, even though she's a complete narcissist throughout the entire show. She never gets challenged on a personal basis, she never grows as a character. Her growth is very superficial at best, and what's left is an absolute narcissist who can't be told no. And that kind of narrative has influenced the majority of girl boss characters throughout the past 10 years. The term girl boss refers to poorly written female characters whose narratives essentially culminate as follows. You were powerful and strong the entire time, you just had to realize it. That kind of arc on its own is completely flat. It doesn't make for character growth, thus makes for unlikable characters, which is why people didn't like Captain Marvel and Rey, and it's why there was such backlash towards Guy Ladriel in Rings of Power. Especially with the likes of Guy Ladriel, who kept making poor decisions and didn't allow anyone to question them or challenge them on their decisions. Why do I bring this up in light of the Bafta incident? Because those kind of superficial narratives with poorly written characters to try to look good, that's exactly how the woke crowd have been writing stories for the past 10 years, and only recently has their hypocrisy been exposed more than ever. There have also been notable individuals within Hollywood itself who have critiqued the stand of elitist Hollywood. Now, something I need to clarify. When I say Hollywood has done this and that, and Hollywood is guilty of this or that, I don't literally mean all of Hollywood. There are some noteworthy individuals working in Hollywood who have shown actual care for craftsmanship, moral integrity, and intellectual dignity despite what's going on. I want to bring some attention to Morgan Freeman, Lupita Nyong'o, Emily Blunt, and Ricky Gervais especially. And some of you are nodding your heads in agreement at the mention of Ricky Gervais because you know what's coming. I want to mention these four because these four have overtly spoken against the woke crowd in recent years in various ways. Let's start with Morgan Freeman, one of Hollywood's most beloved actors. He has spoken up about not wanting to have all this overt activism be perpetuated in culture.
Black History Month you find
ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
No.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman suggests that the best way to end racism is to stop talking about it. Why? Because by ending overtly talking about racism, you end the tribalism that comes with racism and start treating everyone as actual people, regardless of the color of their skin, like Martin Luther King Jr. would have wanted.
Did you ever face discrimination in your career at the start? Do you still feel that it happens nowadays? I mean, what is your view of the issue of race in Hollywood?
I don't think there is an issue of race in Hollywood. Somewhere back there in the 70s, the decision was made by almost all and sundry that we have to start open casting. Now, if you look on television, you pretty much see the range of cultural, that's not the right word because we all belong to the same culture. We just, anyway, but you see everybody. And I think that Hollywood learned in the 70s, oh, here's reality. And of course, Hollywood is colorblind. It only sees green. If it makes money, it's a good thing.
This is very significant because people in the woke crowd won't allow anyone to dare criticize people of different skin colors, even if some of them do something wrong. But if we just removed that bias skin color barrier altogether, regardless of your culture, then you'll start treating people as people and judge them for their insides, not their outs.
In recent months, years, there's been more and more outspoken actresses talking about the unfair portrayal of women in Hollywood. Do you think that that's fair?
The unfair portrait of women in Hollywood?
They're portrayed in a certain way which objectifies
Well,
them.
wait a minute. Meryl Streep, Kate Blanchett, Julia Roberts, Renee Zellweger, Charlize Theron, Uma Thurman, Nicole Kidman. I don't think there is an unfair portrait of women in Hollywood. Thank you. I don't. If someone thinks differently, we'll talk about that.
Other notable individuals would be Lupita Nyong'o and Emily Blunt, who have overtly criticized specific casting choices in Hollywood productions. Emily Blunt has portrayed some excellent strong female characters, as in actual strong female characters, in her filmography. And she's overtly stated in the past that she doesn't want to be cast in roles of superficial girl bosses. They don't lead to compelling character arcs, according to what she has to say. So she chooses female characters who are not afraid to be vulnerable, who have actual character growth. And that's why she's had critical acclaim for roles like A Quiet Place series, Edge of Tomorrow, and even the recent Fall Guy movie. Lupita Nyong'o has, quite frankly, scolded the Woman King movie, which I mentioned in the previous video. She was originally cast to be in the movie, but Lupita Nyong'o absolutely declined because she had enough common sense and moral dignity to realize that taking part in that film would be an insult to people who suffered in the slave trade, an insult to African people. But the people making The Woman King kept going with what they were doing anyway. They decided to depict the Agoji tribe as heroes, even though in real life they were absolute villains who supported the slave trade. Why are they doing that? Because they want the superficial appeal of looking good. Oh, look at us, we look good, but in real life, these specific African women supported the slave trade. Why is it that woke Hollywood never actually depicts original cultural stories from Africa? Why not give us actual strong African women who actually did something dignified? Why can't the woke just do that? And then comes Ricky Gervais. Oh boy, Ricky Gervais. I'm referring to his 2020 Golden Globes speech. Oh yes, we're talking about that moment. For those of you who don't know, Ricky Gervais is a very dry-humored, cynical British comedian. Now, I find Ricky Gervais to be way too cynical in his approach to life. But this moment where he gives a speech in front of elitist Hollywood members during the Golden Globes ceremony has to be probably the best moment of his entire career.
Many talented people of colour were snubbed in major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The Hollywood foreign press are all very, very racist. So, fifth time. So, we were going to do an in memoriam this year, but when I saw the list of people that had died, it wasn't diverse enough. No. It was mostly white people, and I thought, nah, not on my watch. So, maybe next year. Let's see what happens.
If you've studied history, you'll recognize why they put jesters in the courts and why there was a jester sent forth to announce harsh news to Henry VIII. It's because comedians have a unique ability to use humor to just say straight up facts in front of certain individuals and get away with it, basically. So what Ricky Gervais did was point out the double standards of woke Hollywood. They claim to be good, they claim to be morally upstanding, but Ricky Gervais exposes that they're just as bad as the very people they claim to be critiquing.
Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama, yeah. A superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China.
Yeah, a movie about liberating people made by a company who enforces slave labor. Weird, right?
So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you?
Ricky Gervais then goes on to essentially say, look, most of you are not in a position to lecture us about any issues. Because if you're seriously going to stand there and clap for stuff that's pretty messed up, what right do you have to lecture us about moral standings?
So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and f*** off, okay?
Quintessentially, just do your job, make us happy, and shut up. Now, I should note that Ricky Gervais said most of you, which validates what I said, that not all of Hollywood takes this hypocritical, superficial stance. Like I said before, there are notable individuals, including Ricky Gervais himself, rather evidently, who have stood against these superficial double standards of modern Hollywood. The point I'm trying to make here is that this hypocritical stance that Hollywood has taken has recently been exposed more than ever. And this is a time where people should reflect on the state of the film industry, on the state of the entertainment industry for the past decade, and really start to think about the double standards of the superficial mainstream narrative. Because if you're going to base your morality on the mere fleeting, coming and going opinions from people like elitist Hollywood, you are sorely mistaken.
I know the truth is hard to hear, Walker, But it's time. You're all that's left, and we can't live this lie forever.
I should also mention that for all the pandering that modern elitist Hollywood does towards the African American community in their posters and merchandising for their movies, they censor that when it comes to appealing to China. Again, double standards. They don't actually care about virtue. They care about virtue signaling and social credibility. If there's anything that I've overlooked in this discussion, or if there's anything you want to bring up in the discussion, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd be happy to address any comments that I can. And thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that these people who take these extremist positions can reconcile and repent of their narcissism, and we can gradually heal from what occurred in the past and just move on. That would be the best case scenario for everybody. If they are going to keep up their double standards after everything that's transpired, we'll be there to expose them. In the meantime, ScotsThinker signing out.
I'm so tired.
Do you feel like a hero yet?